I married an American man and moved from France to Boston 5 years ago. His family welcomed me warmly, or so I thought. They invited me to every holiday, every birthday, every family event. They were friendly, polite, and included me in all activities. I thought I was part of the family. Then last month, I discovered the truth. They'd been having separate family conversations without me for years. Real conversations about serious topics, conflicts, decisions, and problems. The conversations I was included in were surface-level pleasantries designed to keep me entertained while the actual family business happened elsewhere. When I confronted my husband about this exclusion, he said it wasn't personal. American families just don't include in-laws in real family matters until they've been around for many years. I said, 5 years wasn't enough? He said, probably not. His family needed to be sure I was permanent before bringing me into the inner circle. I was devastated. I'd spent 5 years thinking I belonged when actually I was being kept at arm's length. This is the story of how I discovered my American in-laws had been performing inclusion while systematically excluding me from anything that mattered. My name is Isabel, and I met my husband David at a conference in Paris 7 years ago. We fell in love quickly, got married 2 years later, and I moved to Boston where his family lived. David's family seemed wonderful. His parents were kind and welcoming. His two sisters were friendly. His extended family was large and boisterous. I felt fortunate to marry into such a warm American family. From the beginning, I was invited to everything: Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July barbecues, birthday parties, casual Sunday dinners. I was always included. At these gatherings, David's family was friendly and chatty. They asked about my life in France, my adjustment to America, my work, my opinions on American culture. They seemed genuinely interested in me. I felt accepted and valued. But I started noticing strange patterns. Conversations at family gatherings were always light and pleasant. We talked about food, upcoming vacations, movies, funny stories, and general news. Nobody ever discussed anything serious or controversial. No family conflicts, no money problems, no health scares, no difficult decisions. Everything was surface level and upbeat. At first, I thought this was just American positivity culture. Americans prefer to keep social gatherings fun and avoid heavy topics. In France, family gatherings often involve intense discussions about politics, philosophy, family problems, and personal struggles. But Americans seem to want gatherings to be light entertainment. I adapted to this style and kept my contributions cheerful and surface level too. The first hint that something was off came during a family crisis. David's father had a health scare that required surgery. David was very stressed about it. We talked extensively at home about his father's condition, treatment options, and recovery plan. But at family gatherings, nobody mentioned it. When I brought it up to express concern, David's mother changed the subject quickly. She said, "Let's not talk about that now. Who wants dessert?" I was confused. David's father was having major surgery and the family was pretending nothing was happening. When I asked David about this later, he said his family preferred to handle difficult things privately and keep family gatherings positive. I said, "But I'm family now. I want to support everyone." He said, "That's just not how my family operates." The pattern continued. David's sister Emma was going through a difficult divorce. David's other sister Julie lost her job. David's parents were having marital problems. David's grandmother was declining mentally. I knew all of this because David told me at home. But at family gatherings, none of these topics were ever discussed. Everyone performed happiness while serious issues were apparently being handled elsewhere. The revelation came accidentally. I came home early from work one day and overheard David on the phone with his mother. They were discussing Emma's divorce, specifically how to split family holiday gatherings so Emma and her ex-husband wouldn't have to see each other. They were making detailed plans about which holidays Emma would attend. This was clearly a significant family discussion involving logistics and compromises. I was shocked. This was exactly the kind of family matter I thought I'd be included in. Emma was my sister-in-law. Her children were my nieces and nephews. Holiday planning directly affected me. Why was I not part of this conversation? When David hung up, I asked him about it. He looked uncomfortable and said his mom had just called to discuss some family stuff. I said, "I heard the conversation. Why wasn't I included?" David hesitated, then admitted that his family has weekly phone calls where they discuss real family business, problems, conflicts, decisions, and planning. These calls happen on Sunday afternoons while I'm at yoga. I'd never known they existed. I asked why I wasn't included. David said I wasn't invited because I'm not core family. Core family is blood relatives only. In-laws are included in social events, but not in decision-making conversations. I was devastated. 5 years of marriage, and I still wasn't considered core family? David said it wasn't personal. His brother-in-law Tom had been married to Julie for 8 years and still wasn't included in the Sunday calls. Emma's ex-husband had never been included even during their 12-year marriage. This was just how his family operated. Blood family made decisions. In-laws attended the outcomes. I said that was completely different from French family culture. In France, when you marry into a family, you become family immediately. You're included in all conversations, decisions, and family matters. Your opinions are valued, and your presence is expected. Being excluded for years would be unthinkable and deeply insulting. David said American families are different. They're more cautious about bringing in-laws into the inner circle. You need to prove you're permanent before being fully included. I asked what else I'd been excluded from. David admitted there had been many significant family conversations I hadn't been part of. When his parents were considering selling their house, the family had conversations without me. When they discussed grandmother's declining health, I wasn't included. When they talked about Emma's divorce and custody arrangements, I wasn't there. When they decided how to split family inheritance, I certainly wasn't invited. All these major family matters had been discussed without my knowledge or input, despite directly affecting my life. Holiday plans, family gatherings, financial decisions, and care for elderly relatives all impact me as David's wife. Yet, I was systematically excluded. I was only brought in after decisions were made, presented with outcomes I had no voice in creating. I felt betrayed by David and his entire family. They'd performed inclusion while actually excluding me from anything meaningful. I'd attended hundreds of family gatherings, thinking I was family, but I was actually just an audience member watching their performance while the real family happened privately. David tried to defend his family's approach. He said they weren't trying to hurt me. This was just their family system. Core family discusses and decides, extended family participates in the results. It kept family matters private. I said that system treats in-laws as outsiders permanently. David said not permanently, just until the family was sure the marriage would last. I asked how many years it took for his family to be sure a marriage would last. David said honestly, he didn't know. Tom had been around for 8 years and still wasn't in the inner circle. Maybe 10 years? Maybe 15? Maybe never? The criteria weren't clear. I said so I could be excluded for another decade or forever? David said maybe, yes. This revelation changed everything for me. I stopped attending family gatherings with the same enthusiasm. I couldn't pretend to enjoy surface conversations when I knew real family business was being discussed elsewhere. I felt like a fool for thinking I belonged. I'd been so proud to be part of a big American family, and it turned out I wasn't really part of it at all. David's mother noticed my withdrawal and called to ask if something was wrong. I told her honestly that I'd learned about the Sunday family calls and felt excluded and hurt. She seemed surprised I was upset. She said they didn't mean to exclude me, they just valued having private family space for blood relatives. I said being included in parties but excluded from important conversations isn't inclusion, it's performance. She got defensive and said this was how their family had always operated. Her own mother-in-law hadn't included her in core family discussions for 15 years. That's just the generational progression. Eventually, when David's generation takes over, their in-laws will be excluded too. It's a cycle. I said that cycle creates multiple tiers of family members. She said yes, that's exactly what it creates, and that's how they maintain family cohesion. I talked to David's brother-in-law Tom about this. He'd been through the same realization. He said he'd learned years ago that he'd never be core family in this dynamic. He attended social events, stayed pleasant, and stopped expecting to be included in real family matters. He had his own family and friends for genuine belonging. His relationship with Julie's family was friendly, but not deep. He'd made peace with being permanently on the periphery. But I couldn't make peace with it. I'd left my country, my family, my friends, and my culture to be with David. I'd invested everything in building a life in America with his family. Learning that his family had been keeping me at arm's length for 5 years while I thought I belonged was devastating. I felt I'd been tricked into thinking I was more connected than I actually was. David and I went to couples therapy to work through this issue. Our therapist helped me understand that many American families, especially older generational families, operate with invisible hierarchies. Blood relatives are core. In-laws are peripheral. This hierarchy isn't usually explained explicitly, which leads to situations like mine where in-laws assume they're more included than they actually are. The therapist said this system often creates resentment in in-laws who expected full inclusion. She said it was particularly difficult for people from cultures where family inclusion is immediate and complete. French family culture doesn't have the same in-law exclusion that some American families maintain. I was operating under French family assumptions in an American family system that worked completely differently. David had to confront how his family's system had hurt me. He'd grown up in this system and accepted it as normal. He never questioned whether it was fair to in-laws. The therapy helped him see how painful it was for me to be systematically excluded while thinking I belonged. He started advocating for me to be included in family discussions. His family resisted initially. They said they'd always done things this way. David's mother said if they started including me, they'd have to include Tom and future in-laws. Their private family space would become crowded. David said maybe that's what happens when people get married. Families expand to include new people. The compromise we reached was imperfect. David's family agreed to include me in discussions that directly affected me. Holiday planning, gatherings at our house, and decisions involving our potential future children would include my input. But they'd maintain their Sunday calls for core family business that didn't directly impact me. I wasn't happy with this compromise, but it was more inclusion than before. The bigger issue was trust. I no longer trusted David's family to be honest with me about what I was or wasn't included in. I was always wondering what conversations were happening without me, what decisions were being made that would affect my life. That uncertainty made it impossible to relax and feel secure in family relationships. I also started building my own community outside David's family. I connected with other French expats in Boston. I developed deeper friendships with colleagues. I invested in relationships where I was fully included and valued, not kept at arm's length. This reduced my dependence on David's family for belonging. 3 years after this revelation, my relationship with David's family is cordial but distant. I attend family gatherings because David wants me there, but I no longer expect genuine inclusion. I've accepted that I'll probably always be peripheral in their family system. That acceptance has reduced my pain but increased my emotional distance from them. David has had to reckon with how his family's system affected our marriage. My feeling of exclusion created distance between us. I felt he'd allowed his family to treat me as an outsider for years without defending my inclusion. He felt caught between family loyalty and spousal loyalty. Our marriage survived but was damaged by this revelation. The lesson I learned is that American family inclusion is often more conditional and hierarchical than it appears. European families, or at least French families, tend to have flatter structures where marriage brings immediate full inclusion. American families, especially traditional ones, often maintain blood family hierarchies where in-laws remain peripheral for years or forever. This difference isn't usually explained explicitly, which creates pain and confusion for people who marry into American families expecting immediate inclusion. If David's family had told me up front that I'd be excluded from family discussions for years, I could have adjusted my expectations. Instead, they performed inclusion while excluding me, which felt deceptive. I wish American families who maintain these hierarchies would be more transparent. Tell in-laws explicitly, you'll be included in social events, but not in family decision-making for X number of years. Then at least people know where they stand. The performance of inclusion while maintaining exclusion is crueler than honest separation. My advice to anyone marrying into an American family: ask explicitly about family decision-making processes. Who's included in important conversations? How long before in-laws are considered core family? Don't assume the warm welcome at parties means you're fully included. Surface friendliness often masks deeper hierarchies you won't discover until you accidentally overhear a phone call. 5 years into marriage, I'm still processing the pain of discovering I'd been systematically excluded while thinking I belonged. That kind of betrayal doesn't heal quickly. David's family didn't mean to hurt me, but impact matters more than intent. They created a system that protected their inner circle by excluding people like me, and that exclusion was deeply painful regardless of their intentions. I'm still in America, still married to David, still attending his family's gatherings. But I'm no longer fooled into thinking those pleasant conversations mean I'm truly family. I know now that I'm a permanent guest in their family system, welcomed but never quite belonging. That knowledge has freed me from expecting more than they're willing to give. But it's also closed off the possibility of the deep family connection I'd hoped to find when I married David and moved across an ocean to be with him.